This is a very special episode I'm sharing with you today. It's a conversation I recorded with the wonderful Andrea Marquez from the This Is Small Business podcast. Andrea had me pouring my heart and story out at 6:30 in the morning as she's based in Canada. Lucky that I am annoyingly perky in the mornings. It's a conversation all centered around the experience of those who try and try hard, of taking risk and embracing failure and reframing what all of it means for us. It covers my career of experimentation and how I use my creative detours to find clarity and build confidence in the fact that nothing lasts forever, and that is brilliant because it means we can always think about what's next, where we're going, what we're headed to, and how we'll grow through it. We can let the thing do a little bit of work to find us. This show, the This Is Small Business podcast, where this episode is originally from, is doing wonderful things for small business builders all over the world. So please consider this a hard recommendation to, once you've finished listening to this episode, of course, to head to the show notes and to follow the This Is Small Business podcast wherever you're listening. Let's get into it, and do tell me what you think about this. You can leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify, or you can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or on kim@unemployedandafraid.com.au and let me know what you think, because like any good entrepreneurial spirit, you know I'm dealing with a vulnerability hangover after this one. Okay, let's go. I need to make space for something else, but I don't know what that is yet. And that is a really scary space to be, because you're like, if I stop doing this, what if? What if I just gave it a little bit more time? What if it got better? Walking away from the what if is such a hard thing, but with nothing being for forever, you can always go back.
Hi, I'm Andrea Marquez, and welcome back to This Is Small Business, brought to you by Amazon. The decision to stop, pivot, or quit without a clear next step might be one of the riskiest things you do as a founder. But for Kim Curtin, it's a familiar and essential part of the journey.
I'm a podcast professional, so what that means to me is, apart from being a creator, I'm also a strategist in the space. So I consult with brands, I consult with creators who are looking for growth opportunities, and I host a show called Unemployed and Afraid, which is all about the experience of personal growth through entrepreneurship. And I also have just recently taken on a role with the podcast network as well to support them in growth.
Through her podcast, Unemployed and Afraid, Kim has interviewed hundreds of founders and creatives navigating the messy middle, those uncertain, pivotal moments when you're questioning what's next. She created the show during her own transition, part curiosity, part survival instinct. And it resonated because she didn't just ask the questions, she lived them. And her vulnerability and transparency in showing the good and not so great moments in entrepreneurship allowed her to build a community of early-stage entrepreneurs and self-starters who craved more honest conversations about what it really takes to build something on your own. Kim's story is less about betting it all on one idea, and more about embracing experimentation as a form of risk. For her, trying is the business plan and letting go is part of the process. But how do you know what's worth pursuing? And how do you know when it's time to walk away? Especially when you have no idea what comes next. That's what I wanted to find out. And it turns out, Kim's relationship with risk started early, when she became an entrepreneur at just 18 years old.
I found myself getting into work as quickly as I could. And about 3 years into working, at I think it was 18 or 19, I decided to buy a beauty salon, which sounds really impressive. It was not expensive. I took the small savings that I had, a few $1,000s, and what I bought from them was their business name and the right to take over the lease and a few small amounts of products, because at the time I was doing beauty salon treatments myself. So, this is a while ago. So the long acrylic nails and the waxing and spray tans and all that fun stuff I was doing as a teenager. And the owner of the salon where I worked wanted to move on, and I couldn't stand the thought of
seeing myself not doing that very thing at that very time. So I thought, well, why not? If other people can do it, why can't I do it? I had watched my parents for their whole life run their business. They had a printing press for their entire working lives. It was a long-running family business, and I had watched them work for themselves. So I think somewhere innately I just had that crazy teenager confidence that I could do it. Long story short, it went terribly. I completely stuffed it up. I did not know what I was doing. I bumbled my way through it.
I mean, starting something like this so young is intense. And so what happened next after this venture didn't quite work out the way you hoped it would?
I'd certainly got a hard lesson in what it means to market a business, what it means to manage money. I had contractors, so what it means to manage people and keep them motivated. It was a very hard and fast lesson in a lot of spaces, and I certainly ended up quite overwhelmed at the end of it. But I did walk away with a kind of an equal 50-50 sense of that was really awful and that was really challenging, and I feel sad for myself. Like I feel disappointed in myself that happened. But also this, well, you kind of can just do anything. Like what now? What do I do now? At that stage, I saw a job that was going at a radio station, and I thought, well, why couldn't I do that? I had no radio experience. I had no formal marketing experience except for what I tried to do with the salon, and the role was in marketing and integration. So I just put my hand up and went for the role and was lucky enough. I think they just saw something in me. Interestingly, I recently interviewed the man who hired me at that stage.
Wow.
He has his own business in e-commerce now, and he remembers that time and just said, your exuberance or your kind of self-belief, like you could see that you had an energy for it, even if you didn't quite have the skill set yet. So that was my first foray in getting into media, and particularly audio-driven media.
How long were you in there, and what was that experience like?
So it was 13 years. I worked for multiple radio networks across multiple states in Australia, following different roles. I worked in sales teams and sales management, and then I ended up working as the head of a branded content division. So it was quite a big role, quite an intense role, for corporate media radio, and working in the radio environment, in any media environment. It is hard and fast and fun and exciting, and the ability to manage the very natural experience of burnout was a challenge for me. It took me a long time to realize what burnout actually looks like for me. But when I am deeply engaged in something, I'm all in. And that all-inness after 13 years of media, I looked back and kind of went, wow, I have been following my intuition through this career for such a long time without ever thinking, is this right for me? I've just kind of followed the opportunity, worked really hard at it, gotten to a really high level where I felt like I was achieving. And, this is around 5 years ago now. When I was there, I just felt like something was missing, something was driving me, and I couldn't figure out exactly what it was, in that corporate environment with, 500 emails a day and all the meetings. And, it's hard to think about what is it that actually lights me up? What is it that I want to do? And I needed that space at the end of that career.
When you started feeling that burnout and questioning what actually lit you up, what did you do next? Did you have a plan?
I was an early adopter of the Great Resignation, which was really fun, terrible timing. But just like I often had the ability to go, it's time to start something new, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's time to stop doing whatever this is, just for now. Very hard decision to make at the time because my identity and my life was so wrapped up in what I did. I had a lot of friends where I worked, and it was a very social environment, and it was very much part of my identity. But it was one of those moments where circumstance led to circumstance, where I woke up one day and went, I can't think of a logical reason. I can't articulate why I need to leave. I certainly don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to tell my workplace that I'm leaving. And so that was in, September of 2019. So I walked out the doors early January of 2020 thinking I would take 6 months to find my purpose, find a business that I could focus on, and perhaps balance that with part-time employment because, reality, you got to pay the bills while you're building a business. So that was my great plan at that stage. All I had booked was to go and do yoga teacher training, not to be a teacher, to just have some time for myself and just really invest in my mental health and in my physical health and just take a bit of a beat and try to get some clarity. That was what I was looking for, because that overarching sense of what is my purpose? What am I here to do? What is my one true passion? Was such a dominant narrative in my mind at that time, because I really thought that's what I was looking for. I really thought that was the win, is to find that one true passion that drives me and gets me up every day. And gosh, that can really push you in bad ways and in the wrong wrong ways, that kind of external pressure on yourself to find the thing.
And then, just weeks after walking away from the only career she'd ever known, the world shut down. She had no job and no roadmap. Just a yoga teacher training program and a growing sense of panic. Kim was, quite literally, unemployed and afraid. And for a moment, she tried to undo it all, second-guessing the decision she'd already made.
I went into hyperdrive and, started to look for a job, couldn't find one because it was 2020 and everybody stopped hiring. And I was living in the middle of the most expensive city in Australia. And so my partner and I made the decision to leave where we were living. So we left Sydney and we moved to remote Tasmania because we just needed to make our lifestyle really cheap so I could start to test and learn. So we brought life down to the lowest common denominator in terms of expenses out and just started to calm and think about what's next. So it was at that stage that in that very small town in Tasmania, I started teaching yoga. And that was a really interesting experience because guiding a group of people towards a feeling to, take people on a journey that's so personal, to use your voice to get people into their body and get them moving is a unique experience. It's a powerful experience for the self because you see what you can achieve when you stay really centered in the moment. So while I was looking for purpose, it kind of found me a little bit in being able to use my voice to support people. And again, that sounds great because I can do that on reflection. I can look at that now and see what that opportunity gave to me. But that wasn't me then going, okay, my purpose is to teach yoga. Let's just keep going here. From there, I decided to become a ceramicist. So I decided to make ceramics.
Wow.
Because I had this funny need that I had in my life that I was like, I want to be artistic.
Had you done ceramics before?
No.
Or was it just like...
No, Andrea.
No? Oh, wow. Okay.
No.
That's a choice.
That is a choice. I mean, it feels so COVID. So I found an incredible woman who was teaching and she taught me. I just wanted to make some pretty plates at the time, make my food look better. And, that then took my interest and I followed that down the rabbit hole. And it took me a long time to get good at it. But I just started backing myself in it and thought, present these well, show that build a brand around it, show that they were very organic pieces, they were handmade and they were as raw as I could keep them. I focused on that as an element and I think that was reflective of me at the time, that I was stripping myself back to rawness and people seemed to respond to that. So, I used Instagram to build a bit of a community. I started to sell direct to consumer and I sold to Airbnbs as well, which helped kind of escalate the sales process. So I was balancing yoga and doing ceramics and I was studying. I was doing a bit of creative writing. I was just really finding my outlets through that period and making the small amount of money that I could to keep myself going.
So you uprooted your life, you left Sydney, a place that felt like home, and moved to remote Tasmania to cut costs and buy yourself time to figure out what was next. I know you had the entrepreneurial bug early on, even before your corporate career. So while you were experimenting with all these different things, were you actively searching for your next big business idea or just following whatever felt right in the moment?
I think I've always been looking for my next big business idea. The lightning bolt that people talk, I had this idea and I knew it. I knew it was my thing. I was always looking for that. And it's such a narrative that I find so frustrating now on reflection. It's such a fool's journey because it always is, it happens for so few people that it's it's this and this is what I do forever and I'm obsessed with it and I will never do anything again and I'm so happy and fulfilled. I thought that's what it had to look like in business, in career, in what was going to make me successful. And it took going through all of those little businesses to be like, no, that was great for a purpose. That was great for a season. Now it's onto something else.
Listening to you talk about trying all these different things, yoga, ceramics, creative writing, it actually reminds me of a conversation I had with Blake Shook, the founder of Desert Creek Honey. He said that entrepreneurship is kind of like an addiction. You're constantly trying to chase the next idea and to solve problems. And I feel that in your story. So let's talk about that business idea that stuck. When did podcasting first start to pull you in?
It was when I was sat at my ceramics making space, and so many of the podcast themes that I went for at that stage were that typical inspire me to, where I have to go in business, teach me things about business, teach me to be better. It was very much that kind of professional development angle. And also that, let me feel community. I was very isolated at that stage, myself and my partner and our little pug, just the three of us in this tiny town in Tasmania. I found myself somehow getting like more deeply engaged, but also more isolated. And I was listening to a lot of the podcasts and I was like, oh, this one, I feel like I want more from that. I feel like I want more from that. I feel like I want to go a little bit deeper in the feels here. And I just thought it was, just a trigger thought. I've done so many why not me moments across the years, even though it's been very uncomfortable because I've always felt like I never had the right qualifications to do something. I've still done it. So I thought, why not try a podcast? Why not let that be the next angle? So I had plenty of friends who had built their own podcasts as well, given the industry that I was in. I had seen podcasting from the other side, in the sales side and in the growth side. I hadn't ever taken the stab to record my own voice, but being a yoga teacher and hearing my own voice and learning to project, I had sort of gotten a little bit more confidence in what I could say. So I started to think, why not me? Why not try one?
Did you immediately think about it as a professional pursuit, as a business, or did you first think about it sort of like a hobby?
I absolutely thought about it as a business. I knew from that get-go I needed to make a name that was sticky, a brand. I need to build a brand around this. And that's always how I've approached in my pursuits is it's kind of brand first and how it looks, how it feels to a consumer, and then how it can potentially make me money. Commercializing it, marketing it is always my first go-to. So I knew if I was going to do something, I wanted to build it as a professional pursuit from the outset, as well as being a passion, a hobby. But in saying that, I was also terrified to do it. And so I had to be coaxed along the way. And because I was thinking 2-3 years ahead, which is both helpful but unhelpful at the same time, I was getting in my own head a lot about it. So in the ideation process and in trying to figure out how to structure it, I had lent on a company and somebody I had worked with before who'd started that company to give me a little bit of guidance. And he said to me, take the pressure off with this, just do 6 episodes. And so like nobody had really said to me before, you don't have to go to the nth degree. You actually don't have to make this everything. You can just make this small for now. So I had both set it up thinking it's going to be a business, but also taken the chill factor a little bit and gone, okay, I will do 6 episodes. I will see how this feels before I go all in. So I did those 6 episodes and I knew by episode 3, I was like, I love this. I love the ability to sit down, have a conversation with someone and get deep, get into the feels, get into the emotion of it all and follow it through. I enjoyed holding space for people. So I knew very quickly that I had something here, but I didn't know exactly what was going to come next with it.
I can hear how different your energy is when you talk about podcasting. It's a whole other level compared to ceramics or yoga. So, and I think we all know the answer to this. Are you still doing yoga and ceramics?
No.
But you're still doing podcasting.
I'm still doing podcasting. Yeah.
Why? What was it about this one that stuck for you?
The reason that ceramics didn't stick with me is it's one of those kind of businesses that it's like scale or don't. I want to be successful professionally, and that means financially. And so, it comes to that stage where you're like, okay, do I invest another $10,000 in equipment and go to that next scale? Even though I'm enjoying it now, the answer for me ultimately was no, because that is too much of an investment in something. I'm not sure I actually want to do this for 10 hours a day every day to make it profitable. So I realized that I wanted to come back to Sydney, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to move a 250 kilo kiln interstate again and keep moving myself around. So I had to wind that down. But the podcast stuck. The podcast definitely stuck. And I think it stuck because I think it brought me the ability to be creative in a way that wasn't overwhelming. And it had enough flexibility within it that I could, think and explore. It was challenging me in ways that felt both comfortable and uncomfortable because it was bringing so many of my other skills in. That 13 years that I spent in media was not wasted when it came to building this product, because although I never learned the technical skills at that role, what I learned is branding, and what I learned is branded content, and what I learned is sales and marketing and all of those core skills that were so important to building this. So I just kind of felt like it fit, but I also just allowed myself to learn about the medium.
What I'm noticing in your story is how often you pause to ask, what do I want my life to actually look like? I think that's such a powerful reminder that our businesses can evolve as we do. And I think that's also why Unemployed and Afraid stuck such a chord with people. You sit down with founders in the thick of uncertainty and you hold space for honest, emotional conversations about what it really takes to start over or build something new. You built a loyal community by asking the right questions and by being open about your own messiness too. And then after you found something that fit, you still chose to diversify, right? So that reminds me of something that another one of our This is Small Business guests said, Dr. Matt Rutherford. He said that one of the ways entrepreneurs manage risk is by diversifying rather than relying on a single idea or income stream. And that's exactly what you've done. You now have your show, Unemployed and Afraid, your consulting business, and now your new role at a podcast network. What did that decision to diversify look like for you? Was it intentional or something you realized you needed along the way?
I thought that working just alone and solo and, being a solopreneur would be the thing like that would bring it all together for me. Again, I thought that it was going to be everything, but the experience of doing it day to day felt far less engaging than I thought it was going to. And so joining a network absolutely became the primary opportunity to tick all of those boxes that I had to go through a little bit of hell and back to realize was important to me. Working with others, being creative and being close to the industry, being right available there to see the evolutions, to get my hands on all the data and the detail and work with others to build things.
Was it scary to go back to something that had previously burned you out?
How everyone always thinks the grass is greener on the other side. And
always
so I was
proven wrong, but yes.
always proven wrong. I really, really started to realize like the grass is just greener where you water it. And what looks amazing for another person might not fit your constitution, but you're not going to realize that until you try it. Having that constant experience and having the experience of having to go again all the time just really took the intensity out of the choice. That doesn't become my identity now. It's one of the things that I do, and it's one of the things that I'll do for now. Will I do it in 5 years' time? I don't know. I don't know who that person is yet, and I don't need to know yet. It's just finding the right structure of work for my constitution and what I need to enjoy myself and to have the financial kind of support that I need and what I want to build that way to be able to do work that I'm passionate about. I absolutely know that at 70 years old, I will probably start a new business and it will be something super random. There is also a chance at that age that I might be a CEO of a multinational corporate. I have no idea, but it actually doesn't matter to me anymore. And what certainly doesn't matter is what anybody else thinks about what I'm doing anymore. And that was a huge takeaway from the journey. It was always something that I worried about, how it looks, and I don't care anymore.
Another point Dr. Matt Rutherford brought up was that entrepreneurs rarely have the full picture when they start, because if they did, they might never take the leap. And I imagine that's something you've seen in your own journey and in all the conversations you've had with founders on Unemployed and Afraid. But that got me thinking, how do you tell the difference between a rough patch that you just need to write out and a sign that it's time to pivot?
There's usually a lot of behavioral patterns that start to come in, the negativity, the resentment, the blaming others, and, everything could be great if that person wasn't doing that job and that person wasn't impacting me in that way. And if only I lived here, everything could be better. And, that kind of outside of self looking. And I gave myself a moment for pause because I literally just did the same thing. So I'm certainly not evolved in this space, but if I move back to Sydney, everything's going to be better. So, you do start to look outside of yourself when you know you need to make a change. But it's about recognizing that and bringing it back in and going, okay, let me take the resentment out of it. Let me take the sting out of it. And why do I feel that way? What does it mean to me to be in that space? What's driving me? Being present and the ability to come back and take a breath and put a pause between self and the thing and look at it with a little bit more context is really important. And so it's less about the thing and it's more, I think, about the space that you need to create for something new to come in. And so I think that trigger of I need to put something down to do something else is often so much a a guide that's bigger than yourself. Sounds very woo-woo, but I don't mean it to. But it's something that's bigger than what you can intellectualize, then that you're like, I need to make space for something else, but I don't know what that is yet. And that is a really scary space to be, because you're like, if I stop doing this, what if? What if I just gave it a little bit more time? What if it got better? Walking away from the what if is such a hard thing. But with nothing being for forever, you can always go back. I'm a perfect example of that. I literally work for the place that I left in 2020. It's the same place. I've literally gone back to the same business in a different role. I'm in podcasting. I'm in a podcasting role, whereas I was in a branded content role before. So I have literally gone back. So you can always make a decision and let it ride out, and then, remake a decision again that takes you back to a new space. So I think for me, I know it's the right time to move on when I'm projecting negatively onto the thing, and I need to take a really good hard look at myself.
You know what this reminds me of? The sunk cost fallacy, where people keep pouring time, money, or energy into something just because they've already started it, even if it's not working. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs fall into that trap. They're so afraid of looking like they failed that they just keep going to prove that they didn't quit. But you've taken a different kind of risk. You've given yourself permission to experiment and to walk away when something doesn't serve you anymore. How do you think about failure in those moments? What does it mean to you?
This topic of failure is such an important one to think about, because we hear so often the logical lines of, you don't know unless you try. Failure is growth. We should aim for failures. So I think it's an exciting thing to talk about, because we are actually reframing it now as badges of honor. And I definitely think that's where we need to go. And the ability to say out loud, I tried something and it didn't work, but that's okay because I learned some stuff. Getting comfortable with that is such an exciting place to be, because you start to get addicted to building and trying things, and that's a fun place to work from. Some people will have the one thing and the purpose and the I can't think about anything else moment, but I do think that they are the minority. And with so many businesses failing every year, it is because they've tried. You don't ever see what they go on to next. So, getting addicted to building, getting addicted to finding out who you are through what you do, I just think that's a really fun place.
That feels like such a powerful mindset shift, because when we take the fear out of failure, we start to take the fear out of risk too. So when you think about all the risks you've taken over the years, how has your relationship to risk changed over time?
I think my relationship to risk is built up and wrapped up in a general entrepreneurial spirit that I know for me, I underestimated my entrepreneurial spirit, which is not necessarily that I have to be a full-time entrepreneur all the time to call myself that, but that risk is inseparable from that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think we all have within us a tolerance for risk that can be stretched at any given time. I think I take more risks now, but I'm cautious with myself, and I'm cautious with how I treat myself through that process to be able to acknowledge this before I do it. This is going to be yucky. This is going to be uncomfortable. This isn't going to go how you think it's going to go. And so I need to shut out everybody's thoughts. And I'm also more optimistic actually about what I can achieve now, because I've taken so many micro risks over the years that I think I'm going to take bigger ones as time goes on, but I'm going to be acknowledging that they're a risk more openly to myself and going, yep, let's just ride this through. Let's not be so hooked onto outcome.
What really stands out in your story is how fully you embrace trying, giving yourself permission to experiment, to shift, to start over. And that's what entrepreneurship really is, right? It's not about getting it perfect on the first try. It's about staying curious, even when the path doesn't make sense yet. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I was actually at a get-together not long ago, and a friend introduced me by saying, she has such a badass trajectory. She's tried it all. And I remember thinking, wait, have I? I'd never really thought of myself that way. But the more I reflected on it, the more I realized, I guess I have tried a bunch of different things. And just like you, I don't think I'm done yet. So what would you say to someone who's still in that searching phase, who wants to find their thing but is starting to lose steam?
It would definitely be to just try something that you suspect might be a 10% thing.
10%? That low?
Yeah. You just get a little bit of an interest in something and you're like, let me have a look at this. We get told so often, that thing that you can't stop thinking about, that thing you do when nobody's watching, that thing that you research on the internet when you're bored, that's what you're meant to do. And I find that so frustrating because I'm like, but 1 hour I'll be researching otters on the internet because I think they're adorable. And then the next minute, and I'm in some deep human insight study, and then I'm reading a psychology piece, then I'm reading a book about finance. I'm like, so what do you mean? Like, it's literally all of those things. I think if you get something that you're like, gosh, that's really interesting to me, let me see it through. See it through. It doesn't have to be everything. Starting something in a small way and following a little bit of an instinct of the thing is perfectly okay. You don't have to go so deep into it. If you're not finding a thing and you're waiting for a thing to be everything before you follow it through, you're never going to do anything. You have to keep following it through and just let that be enough, and you'll quickly realize whether or not it's your thing.
What I'm taking away from Kim's story is that risk isn't just about the big leap. It's about the willingness to keep moving even when you don't have the full picture. To start something that only might go somewhere. Or even to let go of the thing that you thought would be it. And experimenting will never go to waste. Every time Kim took a chance on a new idea, she learned something. And when it felt like time to move on, she didn't cling to the past or keep going just to avoid being seen as a failure. She asked, what's next? What else could this be? So what's the 10% thing tugging at your attention right now? That tiny spark of curiosity you've been ignoring. Maybe it's time to follow it because it might be enough to get you to the next thing. I'll be thinking about it too. If you already have an answer or if you've taken a risk that paid off, please send them my way at thisissmallbusiness@amazon.com or by leaving a comment on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm sure they'll be a great help on my journey to figure out how to be more comfortable with taking risks. Plus, you might even get to hear your story in a future episode. That's it for this episode of This is Small Business, brought to you by Amazon. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about us by sending them a link to this episode. Until next time, I'm your host, Andrea Marquez. Hasta luego, and thanks for listening. This is Small Business is brought to you by Amazon with technical and story production by Jar Audio.